Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cody Hoff's presentation on collection and storage of aquatic, native aquatic, and terrestrial plants. My name is Bill Daniels, and I'm the program leader for Native Seed Communities, which is a project of the Indiana Native Plant Society. We're very happy that you're here, and I look forward to introducing Cody in just a minute. But before that, I'd like to share with you some information about Native Seed Communities in case you don't know anything about it. We promote networks of native plant enthusiasts working together to regionally procure, to prepare, to process, and to propagate native plant seeds to increase the presence of these beautiful and ecologically appropriate native plants in all of our landscapes. Our presentations are devoted to discussing the propagation of native plants from seeds and the spotlighting of organizations and individuals that mobilize other native plant enthusiasts to use these seed-grown plants in their local landscapes. We have a lot of resources on the web, and we'll be sharing that information, sharing those links in the chat in just a few minutes. Just a few final notes. For the best experience for everyone, if you would keep yourself muted unless you're invited to unmute and to speak. We will have opportunities for questions. Initially, we will be taking the questions through the chat. And the plan is, if it's topic focused, then Deb will find a good place to wedge in your question, but please use the chat, and then we'll handle it that way. We should have some time at the end as well for a few questions. All right, let me introduce Cody. Cody Hoff is currently the Interim Horticulture Manager at Wellfield Botanic Gardens in Elkhart, Indiana. Cody earned a bachelor's degree in environmental biology from Ferris State University and uses that experience to care for the Woodland Conservation Garden at Wellfield and maintain the heavily native-focused aesthetic gardens. In college, he was introduced to the wider world of botany, which led to his emphasis on a plant-based career. He has always had a passion for the environment and is excited to spread the passion anywhere he goes. So I'm very happy to now give you Cody Hoff.
Hi. My camera has been having some issues, so I'm probably going to keep it off for this, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, it keeps freezing. All right. Gonna go ahead and swap the screen over here.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and share. Here it comes.
All right, and everybody's seeing it?
We see you fine.
All right, great. All right, yeah, like you said, I work at Wellfield Botanic Gardens in Elkhart, Indiana. And let's get right into it. I'm going to be talking about the basics of collecting and storing seeds. I focused on native seeds, and most of my examples will be terrestrial, but I have had the chance to work with some native aquatic seeds through a wetland project that we have developed at Wellfield. So I'll be talking a little bit about my experiences with those. All right, so I'm going to focus largely on the identification and some anatomical aspects of the plant. Some seeds are so small, it's hard to even say what is a seed versus what is a fruit versus, to plant a seed, you have to find it. Then kind of cleaning up the material, getting it down to where you have the seeds isolated, and then talking a little bit about the storage conditions that you're going to want to look for different types of seeds. I'm going to keep a lot of it broad, but yeah, we'll talk about general storage conditions and maybe a few specific ones. But all right. So I want to start off with just how important identification is when you go to collect seeds, and you need to have a target species that you know how to identify. There are a lot of lookalikes that could cause issues. Invasive plants that look like others. Here, I'll give an example with this picture in the bottom right is a picture of a walnut leaf and a picture of a tree of heaven leaf. They're both compound leaves. They're similar sizes. And they, leaf alone, you could easily mistake one for the other. And walnut's a nice native tree that, you know, you can have a nice little snack from, and tree of heaven, unfortunately, is a host for the spotted lanternfly, which we haven't had in my area quite yet, but it's well on its way. And if you mix those up, granted the seeds are wildly different, but the identification is just very important. And if you don't know what you're doing, don't grow it. And another aspect of the identification would just be, you know, if you pick the wrong plant and you grow it, and then you kind of just wasted your time if it's the wrong plant. Identification is very important for knowing when to collect the seed as well. Certain plants, you're only going to be able to collect it at a very specific time of the year. Some of those are going to be fall, some of them are going to be summer. So knowing what you're trying to grow is going to be pretty important, just even to know when to go outside and start looking for the seeds. There's another invasive example I want to give for this as well. On the top left of the screen is Euonymus elatus, burning bush, and just below that is Euonymus atropurpureus. The common name is wahoo. The leaves look quite similar. The habit when they're young is quite similar. The big difference is wahoo is a native plant that could be desirable. We even have some of it in the garden that I work at. And burning bush, although it's still often used as an ornamental, is quite invasive and invades woodlands, and chokes out some of those lower growing ephemerals. So getting those two plants mixed up could be very detrimental for the environment. They also have somewhat similar seeds, although I don't think I did not include the picture of the seeds. Being familiar with the plant anatomy is going to be incredibly important as well. Sometimes you're going to find plants that produce fruits that have seeds with them, given the examples of hickory and walnut. And even these, if you look at the seeds that they produce, the two bottom pictures here, the green spheres are hickory and walnut. And so the center of those has a seed and a fleshy they have a fleshy outside. And most people are familiar with these, which is why I use them as an example. You tear through the flesh and you get to the seed. But there's a lot of fruits that are like that you would have to, you just have to know where the seed is. This is my point. There are cone-bearing plants, such as pines and junipers that I listed. But really any gymnosperm, anything, they don't have to have a fruit in order to have seeds in them. Any conifer will have seeds within it as well. And some seeds are just really easy to pick out. If you're just walking along and you see a grass, and at the tip of that grass, there's some little bundles. You know, the seeds are really easy to find on most grass species. And sycamore is the other example I gave. They're absolutely everywhere when they drop. And they're just, there's no tearing cones open. There's no ripping the flesh apart. It's good to be aware of all of these possibilities when you're collecting seed, especially if you're less familiar with plant material. And it's something that you're newer to. A lot of these are better to collect when they're ripe. Fruits don't really want to be picked when they're too green. Some of them, like the pine cones, won't even be open if they're not ready to drop the seeds. One example I want to mention is something like for picking ripe fruits is jalapenos. They're green a lot of times when you buy them in the stores, and with it being an underripe fruit, some of the seeds might not be viable. And that's an issue with all underripe fruits, and you know that goes for pretty much any native plant, just the same as it would go for something like a jalapeno. And then there are plants that propagate through methods other than seeds, but I'm not going to be talking about those. They have spores, things like ferns and mosses. So some things we just don't propagate so much at Wellfield. So I'll be focusing on seeds. So I want to start talking about a little bit, once you have identified the target species that you would like to collect the seeds, and then you identify the material that you need to be collecting. You'll want to process that material. You'll want to remove anything that isn't the seeds. Now, that's easier said than done with some of these species. For example, I have asters. Actually, I have seeds next to me I was going to show, but my camera's not working. But asters have a very fluffy seed. And taking the fluffiness away from the seed would be incredibly difficult. It's easier to just save them as it is. But for things such as a walnut or a hickory nut, you would want to remove the flesh from it. Anything with a fleshy outer layer, you want to remove that to collect the seed. You don't want any or non-seed organic material when you're preserving it. It opens the possibility it can let rot in, and your material can rot. Your plant, your seeds can rot if you have a bunch of extra plant debris. The material can have fungus or bacteria on it, or potentially even insect eggs. And you just don't want any of that introduced into something that you're trying to preserve. There's a couple of ways of separating. I know there's larger industrial ways, but on the scale that I work with it, we use more of hand separation, and we physically remove the material from the seeds by hand. And sometimes you can use different grates that you can run the material through and let the smaller seeds fall through. And that's a little easier if you're processing a larger amount of material. All right, and so once you get that done, you get the seeds removed. You're going to want to remove anything that could possibly be a non-viable seed. Anything that is shriveled or dried up, or is rotted or discolored, you're going to want to remove those. They're most likely not going to grow. And the rot, if a seed has rotted, it could potentially spread to the other ones as well. The small dried up seeds are just not going to grow, so they're not worth saving. Now, some people might not want to sort through all of the shriveled seeds, which is more of just a convenience thing. But the rot could ruin the entire seed batch if it were to remain, just like the potential for rotten debris could cause issues. So once you get all of those sorted out, you get it down to just seed. You're going to want to clean it off again to just get any possible debris, non-seed plant material off of there. Larger things can be scrubbed, like a walnut. You can scrub the organic material off of the outside. And then you want to dry the material. Usually a paper towel will work well. And then you would still want to allow that to air dry for at least a full day. But until they're completely dry. And once you get them down to all of the plant matter, non-seed plant matter removed and washed and dried and sorted out, then you can actually begin looking at the storage conditions that you're going to want to set up for seeds. All of the seeds that I'm referring to for this will be native seeds. So they do like to be stored cold. So once you have the seeds, you can put them in a container. I like to use paper bags because if there is just any little bit of moisture that's left in it, it can kind of dry out through the bag. If they are very dry, then plastic is a possibility. But they do need to be very dry for something that can't evaporate, where evaporation cannot occur within it. The one difference would be instead of keeping it dry, would be for wetland species, where you want to store it wet. A lot of these species, when they go to seed, they drop the seeds directly into the water. So to remain viable, they need to stay within the water until they are germinated. The only species that I've actually been able to work with for this is Zizania aquatica, wild rice. And we store that wet once it's collected, and then plant it as we go into fall. We plant it in the fall. That way we can get our next crop of it. We don't store that very long term though. Regardless of if you're storing an aquatic plant wet, or if you're storing a terrestrial plant and you're keeping it dry, you're going to want to keep it cold either way. Refrigerator temperatures are kind of ideal for most seeds, especially the native seeds that we have around me. But it keeps it above freezing, but still right around just under 40 degrees generally. So refrigerators are great for storing at the proper temperature. And if you prefer not to have seeds in your fridge, you could also use a protected area somewhere outside. We have a storage room at work that we will often use for winter storage of seeds and rhizomes. So it's protected from the elements, but it still gets that cold and can remain dry because it's covered. So no rain can get to it.
So Cody, this is Deb Howson. We do have a question regarding storage. So the question is, could they use silica beads, turfus, or some other type of granular clay material as sort of a drying agent if it's stored in in plastic tubes or plastic bags?
I personally have never done that. I don't see why it couldn't be done. I think it would be safer to just let it dry out for longer. If you're worried that any moisture has gotten in it, I would say dry it out for a longer period before you go to store it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, storing cold, cold and dry for terrestrial plants, cold and wet for wetland, like aquatic plants, will help them remain viable for as long as we can store them. The storage length can vary quite wildly, depending on what the species of plant is. A general rule that I was told was larger seeds can generally store longer than smaller seeds, but that's also not a hard and fast rule. It's it can vary just from species to species, but most seeds that I have worked with are viable for at least a couple of years without any issues. And it's not uncommon that they're viable for longer than
So Cody, there was a follow-up question to the silica beads. Do you think the sort of things that was mentioned could be used to keep the seed longer for then a season or two, or maybe it's based upon the seed, as you were mentioning? Asking a lot of people, myself included, rent and may want to keep seeds for several years if possible. Oh, retracted. Oops. Question retracted. Sorry. So it sounded like you had mentioned or had answered that, and I was scrolling through his question. So my apologies to John for spitting that question out anyway. But it sounds like based upon the seed is going to be the variant as far as how long they can last, no matter what method you're using for storage.
Yeah, it is largely dependent on the species. I mean, even a tiny seed could last 5 years. It really just depends on the plant.
Okay, thanks so much. Carry on.
All right. And I'm just gonna kind of touch over the things I had already talked about. It's very important to identify the species and what the seed is, so that you know what you're growing, and you have the correct material to be growing it, and you're not causing any damage to the environment by growing invasive species. Once you have the material identified, remove any excessive debris from it that you can within reason, and get it down to just pure seeds, and keep the seeds nice and dry, thoroughly dried, and keep them cool unless they are aquatic seeds that require some type of wet storage. But either way, keeping them cool will be beneficial for long-term storage. So I know that was kind of short, but that is what I have. So I am open to questions if anybody has any more questions.
Thanks, Cody. I'll go ahead and say something right off the bat. Appreciate the practical information, and I don't know if good. My video is on. Didn't know if it was on or not. But I do have a question for you. What kind of seeds do you wash? I've not ever done that, and I'm just curious.
I mean, I guess it's generally the larger seeds that just to get everything off of them.
You just like put them in a 5-gallon bucket or something and shake them up and
just kind of
clean that off?
Yeah, nothing like super thorough generally.
Yeah, okay.
Just to kind of wash them off, really.
Yeah, and then you dry them and then you store them or plant them immediately. I also had a question about some of the aquatic seeds. Do you have like water beds that you propagate in, maybe have a few inches of water above the seeds? And just curious a little bit about that, a little bit of a description there.
Sure. So as far as propagating from seed, the only one that we do is the wild rice.
Oh, okay. It's the wild rice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a small tray that we fill with water, and then seed starters that we set directly in the water, and we just let that sit through the winter, and they sprout in spring.
Oh, okay, that sounds good. Deb, any other questions? I think Dave Wise had one early on.
Would
you like?
I don't know if I saw that.
Here, I can read that.
Some other. Oh, I do see. So there was a question though. Any details or info on carex seeds? So I guess the question is referring to any specific requirements related to Carex.
Carex is not a genus that I've really worked with as a seed, so I can't speak specifically about it. For what I know is it's we've treated it. I think last year we grew one species, but we treated it just the same as the other natives that we had started. But I don't have experience collecting and storing those seeds.
Okay. Okay. Are there any seeds that you would not want to let them dry out? You would basically collect them and then get them planted as quickly as possible.
In my experience, aquatic seeds are the only ones that I've worked with that would fit that description.
Okay. Dave, I will say last month we were doing Oaktober, and correct me, Bill, but I think he'd said that white oak acorns needed to be planted pretty quickly.
Oh,
So those don't
Yeah,
sit around on your kitchen counter like mine did.
yeah, no, they immediately start throwing down the radicle, the root, and whereas the reds, they'll wait
Yeah.
through the winter.
Yeah.
Now, one thing about Carex, I've propagated about 10 species, and typically there's nothing special about that. If you go to Prairie Moon Nursery, maybe we could put that in the link. I'll do that afterwards. They'll give you some guidelines on treating, and primarily of stratification, and just a month or two is usually good. So I'll put that in there, and that's what I would recommend. If you have any questions about specific species, don't hesitate to send a note. I think if Deb hadn't already done so, she'll share my email, seed@indiananativeplants.org, and then I can help you with that, or you can go on our Facebook group, Native Seed Communities, actually Indiana Native Seed Communities, and you can ask questions there too. So.
All right. I haven't done that. I got wrapped up in the presentation, and let me hang on there. I think there were a few more questions. Let's see. Does it vary by species, or do they all need cold and moist storage? Excuse me.
For native species, they do like to be stored cold. I imagine some species might be able to store a little warmer. All the species I've worked with have preferred cold storage, and they have lasted longer under those conditions. Anything that we didn't get to the cold did have issues.
Okay. Let's see. One of the listeners wanted to know what your favorite plant you've collected and grown from seed, or that you've been excited to grow from seed.
Definitely is Zania aquatica with it, because it's just so unique. It is really the only aquatic that I've done from seed. So I really enjoyed that process. It was collected from, or if you guys are familiar with Orbis, they had collected the seed for us originally, and then we have since planted it, grown it, collected it, and yeah, that's definitely my favorite one.
Cool. not done any aquatic. I've got soft and very moist areas, but it's not aquatic. So it's kind of a something I'd not thought about in the past or to do. So Bill, there's no more questions that I see. I did
Let me
get
see.
all of
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
links posted.
Thank you. Did you do David Wise's question about growing native shrubs and trees like dogwoods?
No, I'm sorry, I did not.
No, it was right at the very beginning.
Oh, I thought that was
So,
just,
would
would
like
like
to.
to grow. I thought that he was responding to what's your favorite,
Maybe
maybe.
it was.
Yeah.
Is that right, Dave?
Yes, that's correct. I was wanting to kind of just listen in on native shrubs, especially
Oh,
species.
I have lots of rough leaf dogwood that just keeps popping up all over in my woods. And so I keep digging and transplanting them here and there. Would you like some?
Oh, probably.
So I will be at the IMPS this weekend.
Okay, very good.
So I'll have Bill point you out to me, and we can meet face to face, and I'll have a couple dogwoods for you. They may not be very large, but
Okay.
pretty dry.
Yeah, and for those of you that have tickets already, because it is the registration has it's full. Do look us up, especially at the seed swap. Looking forward to that very much. Mark has really gotten it organized, and it should be a great event. So, all right. Well, if there aren't any more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. So thanks again, Cody. Appreciate your time in the presentation, and learned a few new things, especially about washing some of the seeds. I'll keep that in mind for in the future. For those of you that have additional questions, I've already mentioned it. Feel free to send a note to seed@indiananativeplants.org. You should be able to copy it right out of the chat. You can also, as I mentioned, come on to our Facebook and ask questions there. It's a group Facebook, so anybody can participate. As far as next month, we, as our pattern is, we do hold these on a monthly basis. And next month we have Nathan Pugh from Heartland Restoration Services. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But thanks once again to Cody for the session tonight. Deb, thanks for your help with the technical aspects and for handling the questions. It was good to see you all. We'll sign off for now, and happy growing natives from seed. All the best. Bye.